Have you ever felt like giving up, quitting, throwing in the towel? Welcome to Never Ever Give Up Hope featuring Carol Graham. She's an author, health coach, and motivational speaker. Backed into a corner multiple times in her life, Carol shares with you stories on how she overcame some of the toughest obstacles a person can go through in life, but refused to give up hope. Rather than admit defeat, an opportunity was presented, and it involves each and every one of you. Carol will feature spectacular guests who will share their messages of hope, encouragement, and their inspiration to prove why life's adversities only make you stronger. And now, welcoming the host of the show, here's Carol Graham.
Ever give up hope. Never Ever Give Up Hope is a show about people who have done just that. They never gave up, no matter what the circumstances were. They persevered. Many of my guests have survived incredible circumstances. In fact, most of them have. And as a result, what I have seen, the pattern is these people have an incredible passion to help others. People who may be going through something similar, or even if it's not similar, but still that they can relate to. Many of my guests have survived extreme poverty or abuse, whether it's marital or physical or childhood, but different forms of abuse. And some of them have had to overcome serious depression or disease. But each guest has had to learn how to fight to survive. And this show gives them that opportunity. They share their stories, they give us tips, they give us encouragement, and they all give back. They offer something to help you. We're now heard in over 140 countries, and we still maintain the #1 rank on Google searches on the subject of hope. That shows me that that's a subject that is needed all over this globe. People are looking for hope. So I thank you. I thank my guests, of course, and I also thank my listeners, because without you guys, we wouldn't have a show. And today I have somebody with me whose first name is Hope. And that's so exciting. So hi, Hope.
Hello, Carol. How are you?
I'm great. I'm so excited to finally get to do this interview with you. Now, Hope Mueller is an author of Hopey. And I'm assuming, was that your childhood name?
That's right.
Okay. And the name of the book is Hopey, From Commune to Corner Office. She's an inspirational speaker. She's an executive. She's an active not-for-profit volunteer. She's a results-driven leader and change agent. And she'll explain what that is, I'm sure. Hope is passionate about her career development, community service, and many other things. And that passion will definitely show through as she's sharing with us today. Now, her early years were marked by an experience on a hippie commune. And I don't think I've ever interviewed anybody with that background. I have with somebody from the Mooney community, and that might be something similar. I'm not sure. Hope's unique childhood shaped her approach and interaction with the world, as all our childhood traumas do. She has a gift of creating order out of chaos. I love that. Order out of chaos, and so many people struggle with that. And also turning vision into reality. So there's much there that she's going to change with us today. I'm excited. Welcome, Hope.
Thank you so much. I'm glad to be here.
Well, let's begin with your childhood. And in reading your story, it was very clear that no matter how rough your childhood was, you seemed to soar above it and became successful, as many of my guests. And so I really sincerely appreciate that. That tells me a lot about you before we even talk to you. So can you share a little bit about what your childhood was like?
Well, it was a hippie commune, which was full of drugs and sex and violence, periods of homelessness, periods of hunger. And when I say commune, it always elicits in folks' minds this, some remote island or some remote
Right.
mountaintop in Oregon or something. And it wasn't that. It was, in a small community, small college town community, and it was, close to the center of town. But it was a commune in so much that, we didn't have our individual possessions as children or adults. We didn't have our own bedrooms, our own dressers, our own clothes. It was variable people or adults would be watching the kids at various times, and then the kids, were fluid through the home too. It was really marked by pretty heavy drug use. So when I say hippie commune, that's what I think of, right? It's Janis Joplin. It's, that period of time, right? Early 70s. And, I'd say it wasn't a religious experience. They didn't have a belief system unless you believe in the marijuana plant, maybe.
Okay.
So, there was, they had a ball of acid in the freezer. And, they swapped sex partners, and there were orgies on the living room floor, which us as kids got to experience and got to watch occasionally. And that was some of the highlights, at least.
Now, how did that affect you as a child? Because this was your normal, right?
I mean, on the one hand, I think, you asked, one of the biggest challenges, so we lived there until I was about 6, in that sort of really fluid environment. We were moving all the time. We were hungry. We had periods of hunger. So my mom, knew how to make daylilies. We'd pick daylilies in the park across the street, and she would, dredge them with flour and fry them up, and that was dinner occasionally. And one of the biggest real challenges, you sort of alluded to it, was my mom then went and got married to her third husband, and he was a tenured physics professor. And all of a sudden, we went from this really amorphous, shapeless childhood to a very strict childhood. And you had to, eat at a certain time. We had to set the table a certain way. We all had to, and he was a violent alcoholic. Took the majority of his anger and frustration out on my mom. But, the kids occasionally got in the way. And so honestly, when I think about that stark transition from, wide open chaos to fluid reality to this, really strict and violent experience, I really feel like it was some of that dichotomy that shaped my childhood in terms of I really gravitated towards, a really domineering, violent environment. And I actually became very comfortable in that space because I think some of those other more basic needs were being met, right? We were in a financially more stable situation. We didn't move as frequently. Food was consistent. And so because some of those more basic human needs of food and shelter were being met, the emotional needs, like I got very comfortable with that. And so how did it shape my childhood? I'd say those two things. I probably learned it at the commune, and then really perfected it with my mom's third marriage, was this, sort of blocking technique. I really ignored a lot of what was going on around me, and, would kind of, pay minimal attention and just move forward. Just this, sort of this really simple technique of, I am not going to delve into whatever that is too much, and I'm going to try and head in a new direction. I tell a story in the book where at the commune, one of the men hung himself. And the kids weren't supposed to see, but we ended up seeing. And as we were walking down the street, we were being ushered away. A lot of the older kids were looking back and wanting to, to see the form in the tree. And I did not Like I never looked back. I was just gonna march forward, and I wasn't. So I am very curious. I'm intellectually curious as an adult, but certainly emotionally curious, and just blocking a lot of some of the most painful pieces out.
That was one of your survival techniques,
Yep.
obviously. And I believe, and it's in listening to various stories along the same lines, is that is quite often the case.
Yep.
Have you discovered that like later in life that people with this type of childhood, I mean, well, you have brothers and sisters too,
Mm-hmm.
don't you? So did they
Mm-hmm.
did they do the similar technique of just focusing and
Yeah, no, I mean, we have a whole range of, coping mechanisms that we, executed, and we probably have our own range of psychological behaviors that we display now because of those things, I suppose.
interesting.
But we certainly, I also, at least I've read a lot about birth order, and so I am the youngest, and there's it's a fairly common approach to the youngest is to, sort of block things out and use that as a coping mechanism. I think every child, has their own opportunity to try and manage however best they can. And then as they become adults, hopefully they have a few really great opportunities or great people and great helpers and along the way to, sort of help you grow into a successful, functioning adult, if you will.
Yes, I understand that, and and with hindsight,
Mm,
you may agree or not, but what I'm finding with many people who have gone through this type of trauma at a young age is that their focus becomes the opposite of what
yeah,
they want to accomplish because of what they went through. From what I understand, they were much more focused, much more determined. Did you find that that was what pole vaulted you in that direction as well?
absolutely. So, I moved out when I was 15. And throughout the majority of my childhood and most of my adulthood, my mom was both an addict and an alcoholic, depending on where she was at on her journey. That is absolutely real of just being laser focused on getting out and doing whatever it took to create a better life for myself. And that started by moving out when I was 15, because I figured there would be some measure of an ability to even create some more stability for myself. Now, having said that, I was young and I went through all of and a lot of what the second book is about is I recreated a lot of the similar challenges and environments that I went through as a child. I essentially my first marriage was someone who was very similar to my mom's third husband. But I will say, absolutely, it was this focus and persistence to create a life for myself and create a life for my children that looked very different than what I had experienced. Absolute motivator.
Was there a point when you said enough and you wanted to change direction? Did that ever happen to you, whether as a child or later?
Yeah, so as a child, I mean, I was just really moving forward as fast and as laser focused as I could, and it didn't matter when I hit pretty massive speed bumps along the way. I very rarely even considered options that would mark me or that would get me off of my path. And one of my examples is I got pregnant with my first child when I was a sophomore in college. And I took one semester off and then went back, the semester she was actually born. I went back and one of my friends says, like, "Oh, you're going back to school?" And I said, "Yeah, of course." And he said, "Well, I didn't think you would finish." And not until he said those words did I
Huh.
even consider not finishing school. It had never even dawned on me to not go back. So, you just get really focused. And then certainly as an adult, and this is the primary story in the second book of, being married, and I went through my own bout of addiction early on, and then being married to an abusive addict. There was absolutely a point where I said no more, and that is what the second story is about. The second story is about clawing back my own self and my identity as an adult, as a human being, as a woman. And that's a lot of what the second story is about.
Do you recommend reading them as a sequel?
Yeah, they definitely, you can read them either individually. The second book isn't finished, or it's going to be launched in May 2020. So, we are getting all of the final touches in and getting it to the publisher soon. The first book has a couple of elements. It is from my young childhood to when I take my entrance exams to college. But I have another device in there that I call a flash forward. And I don't know if that's the real name for it, but that's what I made up the word for it. It's little glimpses of my life today. So although there's, some tumultuous childhood and different things that are happening, there's these little glimpses of my life today showing you how great it can be. And you can get wherever you want to go, no matter where you're at, where you started, maybe anything that's happened to you. None of that it has to define who you are and where you end up. And that's the crux of the first book.
And the second one?
And the second one, it tells a lot of the same story. I would say this, I think the second one it's a much more targeted towards making sure that if being comfortable and confident and knowing that you deserve love and appreciation, period, right? So the first one is really more feels, for at least for me, it's weird because I'm the author, but it feels like, hey, no matter where you start, you can go out and do whatever you want. And there's certainly that foundation in the second book, but it's also recognizing that you as an individual, as a human being, you deserve love and appreciation for exactly who you are. And being really comfortable with that knowledge. And that's the underlying theme and message that's coming out in that second book.
I appreciate that very much. You can be loved and appreciated for exactly who you are. My question is, don't many people try to change who they are in order to feel that they can be loved and appreciated? You're coming from it from the back door, correct?
Yep. And that's absolutely true. I think that's exactly the process, especially the process that I was going through with my first marriage and the abuse that was happening. It's, what do I need to change? How can I do better?
Right.
I could just get this right, then he wouldn't be mad. If I could just do this right, there wouldn't be a fight. And that's just false, right?
So at what point did you realize that?
So,
As an adult?
yeah. So this was as an adult. This was, I don't know. I think these lessons are learned over and over again in your life, right? And there's points in your life where you tell yourself that, but then you get an opportunity because life keeps happening to relearn that same lesson.
Right.
But certainly the most, the critical pieces of that were, we had a really violent near-death exchange as an adult, and that was my final straw. But there was a series of 1,000 straws that I was making that decision and clawing back myself and identifying myself and being comfortable and confident in myself over a couple of years. It's not just a one-day thing that happens. It's little steps to, understand who you are and understand that that's who you deserve to be loved and appreciated for exactly who you are.
Your memoir is written as a novel, correct?
It is written as what we call an inspirational memoir. So it is, I've changed sometimes. I've compressed times a few times. I've certainly changed the names. And there was one event in the first book where I combined two events and told it as one story. But it falls under the literary category of memoir.
It's from what I have read and also looking at the comments that other people have made, it not only is a page turner, but you can't put it down. Your writing technique is incredible. It's believe me, anybody listening, this is an enjoyable book if you want to use that
Mm-hmm.
term loosely, just, because because of the story content, but
Mm-hmm.
also inspirational because it makes you feel like this is what she went through. Look at what I went through. If she can do it, I can do it. And is that kind of like the underlying message as well?
Absolutely. I think one of the pieces that was so foundational, it doesn't, so yes, I had a really wild and tumultuous childhood, but even with that, my mom and the adults in my life believed in me. They told me I could do anything, and they did love me unconditionally, addictions aside. And you can build on that. You can build on your own, belief and foundation in yourself. And had I had that as a traumatic childhood experience where I wasn't told I could be anything, where I was belittled or made small, I'm not sure I would have made it out. But because I had that foundation of belief, all of the other trauma on top was something that I could persevere through.
That's excellent. Before we talk about your memoir and some of the other things I want to chat with you about, can you tell us a little bit about what you're doing now? Like you have become quite successful. Just share a little bit about that.
Okay, so right now I'm a successful executive in the pharmaceutical industry. I lead teams. I've been leading different organizations for over 18 years, taking roles of increasing responsibility. To touch on some of the points that you opened with, I launched a scholarship fund last year. I initiated the process for beginning a charity, and I sit on multiple non-for-profit boards, and have been very active in the non-for-profit space for the last 5 to 6 years. And it is absolutely, part of my identity of giving back and helping children and families in need.
And you come from a place where you can relate to a great number of people.
Absolutely.
Now, there were three things when I was reading through your notes. There are three things that are necessary to be successful that you share. I'll just say them and then if you could discuss them, that would be awesome.
Okay.
One is focus, and I love this. Focus on the solution instead of the problem. That's my middle name. And when you've gone through a lot, such as you have, such as I have, we could easily focus on the problem. We have to choose to focus on the solution. So I appreciate that, you saying that. The second is to be comfortable with change. And that as well, that's a whole huge subject all by itself. And the
Mhm.
third, another favorite, persistence, persistence, persistence. That's the whole thing about not giving up and being laser focused. Share those three things with us.
Yeah, so it's funny. There's times when I'm sitting, in a boardroom and we're talking about these, a big opportunity or big decisions, right? Hundreds of millions of dollar decisions. And I'm not the primary decision maker, certainly, but I definitely have an input and I have a voice. And I look around the room and I think, oh my God, how did I get here? What is happening right now? And when I go back and I reflected, what did I learn and what three techniques could anyone deploy, to ensure some measure of success? And it is those three areas. I have found that, especially in my workspace and my home space, right? Being focused on solutions instead of focusing on problems allows you to move forward and create the solution or the environment or the life that you want, or create the career that you want. If you are constantly focused on, well, I don't have this, my boss doesn't let me do this, and I can't get this done because of XYZ, I would challenge those thoughts and say, where can you find the solutions? How can you move forward? If you can't get it through this person, how about, what relationships can you go and build that will help you get the answers or the effort that you need behind that? So that's really focusing on solutions, and moving away from sort of a place of being a victim of the circumstances around you. Comfort with change. It doesn't matter what industry you're in. It doesn't matter where you work, right? Change is happening and more change is coming. And maybe it's as I get older, but change seems to be coming faster and faster and faster all the time. And being really comfortable with that and saying, okay, instead of being afraid and making decisions out of fear or letting your fear, limit your vision, you can say, this change is happening. Try and set aside an emotional response. What can I do? How can I be part of the solution? How can I influence the new reality? How can I influence the new environment? And actually being, again, leans into part of the solution. But I am sure my ability to be comfortable with change is directly related to my early years on a commune. It was complete chaos. Nothing was solid. So, hey, this just seems really familiar. Having said that, that's where the creating order out of chaos comes in, right? So I was in a super chaotic environment, and now I'm in a super orderly environment, and I create that for myself. And it doesn't matter what situation I'm put in, that is a repeated process. Chaos, order, chaos, create order. And that is done through that persistence. Focus, be clear on what you want to go after, and then just drive like mad for it. And bumps will be there, right? Stuff is going to happen. You're going to get pregnant or maybe not, or you'll have stuff will continue to happen and, sort of put some barriers in your place, but either find the workaround or drive right through it. But if you wake up every day and persist, you will look back in 5 years, you will look back in 10 years and go, oh my God, look at the things I got done. Look at where I'm at today. And could life even be as good as it is? How amazing.
One thing that you said that I really like, you just mentioned, is find the workaround or drive right through it.
Yep.
That is excellent. That kind of summarizes any problems that we may have. In other words, that covers focusing, that covers in being comfortable with change, and also persisting and staying focused. So I really thank you for that. Now, regarding anything in summary that you want to share about your memoir, your next book, maybe give us a little tip. Your memoir is so intriguing. I mean, I want you to share a little more about that. Why should somebody buy your book? Is it a Saturday night read, or how is it going to change their lives? Give us something. Sell us your book.
Okay. So it's funny. A lot of people ask me, well, why did you write the book? And over time, I don't know why I wrote the book. I wrote it. But I will say, I have had so many readers reach out to me and just say 5 simple words or even 4 simple words. And it's, thank you for writing this book, right? Thank you for this book, right?
Great.
And it's so powerful. And every time I get this email message or a lot of people, especially women, have said, thank you for sharing your story. So I want everyone to know it doesn't matter who you are. It doesn't matter what you've experienced. It doesn't matter where you are at today. You can go out and be amazing. You are amazing. Your life can look exactly the way you want it to. And I want to share my story with you and know that you can have the same things. You can go and do and be amazing.
And never, ever give up.
That's right.
Well, thank you so much, Hope. That was inspiring, challenging, intriguing, inspirational. I mean, I really appreciate everything. I mean, you said a lot in a short period of time, and your book is available on Amazon, and also it will be available on the show notes after this show. I so appreciate it. Are you still called Hopey?
No, my mom still calls me Hopey occasionally. And you can reach out to me at hope@hopey.net. If you email me, I'll email you back. And
Wonderful.
If you want to talk about your experiences or you want to talk about your life, you just want to share. I have it's been the most rewarding part of the whole process is connecting with readers, and knowing that, I've been able to inspire or connect with, amazing people around the world.
Thank you. And you're very encouraging, and we all need those words of encouragement. So I thank you so much, Hope.
All right. Thank you, Carol.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to Never Ever Give Up Hope, featuring Carol Graham. Did you know that most people succeed because they are determined to? Quitting was never an option. Carol loves your comments and will respond to each one. So please subscribe and review this podcast. A rating of 5 stars would be outstanding and appreciated. Remember, if you are still here, there is always hope.